Yeah, this one is true. There's no real argument that I have against it. If you look at his journals, his art, his music, even his music that's been released to the public is very strange, and sometimes reveals aspects of his character that are definitely questionable. Most notably is the story he wrote in his journal about sexually assaulting a mentally handicapped girl in high school. Even if this story is fake, which I lean under the impression that it is, it just shouldn't be something you write about. I mean, maybe he thought it was funny, or he wrote it as some sort of artistic piece of social commentary or satire in the perspective of an antagonist, sort of like what he did with Polly. You know that it was from the perspective of the abuser. Either way, this wasn't the only strange thing Cobain wrote, and I honestly could make 3 Nirvana iceberg videos, each an hour long, going over just the weird things Kurt has done and created. Yeah, it's definitely a rabbit hole. Yet another one I can find some validity in, even if I don't fully agree with it like the first. The truth is, a good amount of Kurt's lyrics were written at the last minute with not a lot of thought put into them. Not everything he wrote was some sort of masterful representation of something that needs to be interpreted. Lithium is a good example. I don't think the lyrics are awful in any way, but I don't think there's any deeper meaning beyond literally what he's saying. Kurt was not pondering those lyrics, hiding hidden messages and connotations within them. Kurt was a lot of things. A talented musician, rhythmist, singer, and public performer. Genius lyricist was not one of them, and never will be, no matter what people try to say. I feel like most songs are repetitive, just on the virtue of that being how songs are usually structured. I feel a song has to be at least somewhat repetitive to keep a good flow and stay consistent with the notes and lyrics. And on top of that, I don't think I find Nirvana to be especially repetitive compared to other bands. Polly and Something in the Way are songs that come to mind when I hear this, but that's just not taking into account the intentions of the songs in question. Something in the Way is meant to be somber, earnest, and encapsulate Kurt's raw emotions. Having it be musically diverse would honestly take away from the artistic merit of the song. I just personally don't see this one, in all honesty. I hate this take personally, much more than any other, and I'll explain why. Yes, Nirvana is romanticized over what it could have been. Kurt's legacy and suicide is a huge part of that, no doubt. But it also brings me to my next point. What does that have to do with Nirvana's music? It's not the fault of Nirvana that it's romanticized. The actual music doesn't change in any way. At least the last take had to do with the actual music they produced. This doesn't. This has pretty much nothing to do with Nirvana's music or anything that's their fault in any way. Moving on. I think that this is basically saying that Nirvana is presented as this new wave, generation-defining, boundary-breaking, rebellious punk rock band that no other musician besides Kurt Cobain could have had the balls to pull off, when that simply isn't anywhere close to the truth. And honestly, if you're asking me, I'd have to agree. Don't get me wrong, Nirvana definitely did define a generation, but they mostly built upon preconceived niches. I think they did a good job at doing that, but they're also not in their own league or anything. They're good, and they did impact music in a lot of ways, but they weren't even close to being the first band of their kind. Rebelling against the mainstream and doing whatever they wanted regardless of what people thought were not something Nirvana invented. Numerous bands did it before, and Nirvana isn't exactly breaking boundaries by having this attitude. Not to say that it wasn't entertaining, and they didn't spin it in original ways, but the concept and movement are not something they created. And so, yeah, these are 5 criticisms of Nirvana that I've occasionally seen tossed around. If there are any more that I didn't cover here, perhaps a part 2 isn't out of the question, if enough people are interested. Moreover, I'm also well aware that this is my 2nd Nirvana video in a row. Don't worry about that, my next video will be about video games, just like normal. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good one.